Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Premier Pundits mini bite-sized podcast. This is part 3 in a series as we build up to game week 20. We've already looked at defenders. We've picked out some of those appealing midfield assets. Now this is a juicy one, Jason. This is a juicy one. It's attackers and strikers heading into game week 20. So I am joined, of course, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. McKenna. How the devil are you?
I'm all right, Ben. Just recovering. I don't know if people saw, but we had a bit of a problem with YouTube, so a bit annoyed at them. But, onwards and upwards with it. But an interesting point that, we're talking about here with attack this game week. And normally, earlier on in the season, people would be kind of seeing attack as great, loading up on those attacking players because, oh my goodness, there's so many goals. But if you listened into our defensive podcast, which I would recommend because we go through quite a few different and differential assets, we talked about how there's been a regression, and not just back to the mean as some people talk about, but actually well below expected goals per game and things like that. So the amazing thing is now we're seeing that attackers are less valuable in many instances, and these premium players are becoming ever harder to justify in your teams. But of course, with yourself, Ben, you are the injury guru. You're the man that gives us assurances, or it gives us even more worries because you tell us that so-and-so is limping off the field in training. The big one with the forwards is Jamie Vardy. What kind of information have you got there? I think it was a hernia, and he's going to have that operated. What is the kind of time expected for him to return to play?
Brendan Rodgers is very hopeful of a speedy recovery, in all honesty. Said he could be back on the training pitches within 7 to 10 days, with potentially a return to play, a few days after that. Seems highly unlikely, maybe, to the uninitiated. Thinking about somebody who could go under the knife and then be back on the pitch as quickly as that. However, Jamie Vardy has history. I think if we look back at maybe the beginning of 2016, in and around this period, had a very similar procedure. He was back on playing. He played 90 minutes, I think it was, in the league at the beginning of January. And then it was something like maybe 11 days later, that he was back out. He played 71 minutes for Leicester. So he was straight back in to that Leicester lineup under Claudio Ranieri. Now, like I say, as with any surgical procedure, what you will normally hear is this term: it's minor, it's slight, it's not a big issue. Of course, anybody going under the knife, there are potential complications every step of the way. Infection, it doesn't work. So, that's how I would caveat that potential return. But all being well, and if his recovery goes fairly smoothly, then we would expect a return within the next couple of weeks. This is what homeschooling does, and the wife goes, "This is live, so keep your mouth shut."
Right. So with Vardy, then, what is your advice on holding him as an asset?
Look, I mean, even though we're still talking about a very short period of time, then potentially there's still a number of games that he missed. We know we're looking back-to-back double game weeks here, so straight away we have 4 immediate fixtures on the horizon. The likelihood is he isn't going to be involved in any of those, and regardless whether it's Jamie Vardy or any other premium asset, for me, I just find it difficult to have somebody sitting on the sidelines for that period of time. And let's not forget, this is best case scenario. And we're also maybe expecting Jamie Vardy to come back in and hit the ground running. There will be a little bit of sharpness that he's lost. So that's a slight concern. So although he might be back for that 5th game from now, or potentially 6th game, it might be a couple of games after that before we've got to return to performance. Get out. Honestly, get out. Get out. Close the door. Sorry, man.
I love the French fries flash as well there. I mean, that's a good one there. It's making me a little bit hungry. But you know who is annoying me because I don't know if it is a lack of hunger, but he's definitely getting in and around the box. Anthony Martial, he's been getting loads of shots off, 3.01 XGI, but only one goal to his name in the last 6. Man United have amongst the best fixtures over the next 6, though, so I will be holding him. But it's kind of like that discussion with the the Liverpool assets that we had when we talked about the midfielders, Ben. And I suppose a fair comparison would be your ownership of Firmino. Now, they're both priced about the same. It's testing patience here, especially with the fact that we've seen this switch in terms of the meta. Defence seems to be where the buoyancy is at. We're seeing more clean sheets, we're seeing more lockouts. How much patience have you got with Firmino? Because I'm happy to stick with Martial for the time being. I'm going to give it the next few fixtures at least, especially with the ones coming up right on the horizon. They look really good in terms of, is Sheffield United next? I mean, that is just a delicious one. But there's West Brom, there's Newcastle coming up. Whereas with Firmino, is the story slightly different because Liverpool's fixtures are Tottenham, West Ham, Brighton, City, Leicester, and then Everton. Is that a slightly differing story there? Would you give Martial the benefit of the doubt, but maybe not Firmino?
For me personally, Martial will get the nod, particularly as we have question marks over Marcus Rashford. So I may have other fires to put out elsewhere, which could, which will probably save Martial. I'd expect him maybe, if Ollie goes with a 4-2-3-1, Martial to play either side of Bruno with Cavani leading that United attack. And I quite like him coming in off the wing, as opposed to maybe just playing up front by himself in that lone striker role. So I prefer it definitely from that perspective. And it's hard to come off United attacking assets given that the form they're in, free flowing attacking, they're getting lots on the board, lots of chances. So there's potential there, and it's worth sticking. Firmino, patience is wearing very, very thin. I absolutely hate players banging in domestic cup competition or European competition, as Rashford did on Sunday and Firmino did, when they're not replicating that form in the league. Now, I know Liverpool got beat, but there was a marked upturn in their performance. You'd hope maybe that would kickstart or spur them on, or to drag them out of this lull. What they don't want with teams in and around them hitting that little bit of form, the Manchester Cities, they don't want to let those teams get away from them, because within a month's time, if this continues, they will be out of the title race, without any, and that's not without any stretch of the imagination. So it did, dropping Firmino against Burnley. Was that maybe a little kick up the backside that he maybe needed? Or was it, was it just a bit of clever management from Klopp? He certainly responded in patches against Manchester United. His pass for the opening goal was tremendous. Where maybe he's not seeing Firmino in full flow. I mean, it depends. For me, again, because I've got fires elsewhere, it may mean that he has to stick for now. But if I had the luxury of maybe a couple of transfers and, I was just looking to shift players out, then certainly Firmino is not something. It's a punt. You've got nothing there really in hard data that will, that justifies his selection within your team.
And just quickly there, obviously Rashford is a midfield option, but if he's injured, I mean, do you have fingers crossed that he's injured so you can switch your captaincy? Who will that armband be going on? Will it be another set and forget, or will it be relief time and Big Ben can do what he wants?
You know what? I hope it's not serious first and foremost.
Yes,
I
yeah,
do
of
hope
course.
he's injured, and if he can miss a few games, a month even, just so I can relax and just enjoy. And I can guarantee there will be no more set and forget captains ever in my games ever going forward. So yeah, I may have the luxury of being able to pick a captain. That could be Martial, possibly. Who knows? You know what? I'll party. I'm just going to have a party and just pick. I might even stick it on Harry McCain.
Oh,
This or Wilfred Zaha, even as a punt. He's back from injury, so. Yeah, look, I know it's a big game, but I think I can see Palace getting a goal or two against West Ham against the odds.
the world is your oyster at the moment. I can see that there's almost like life and joy in your eyes there, thinking of all these possibilities. Now, I do, and this is not selfish of me because obviously Arsenal, their attack has improved over the last 6 game weeks, and Lacazette is the main beneficiary. And I bring it up because the team do have a difficult run of fixtures, but there is the links, and I don't really like talking about transfer talk. I don't like engaging in all that hearsay, but this is a big one, and it does seem like it's really crossing the line. So I will mention it purely because he might be signed by next game week, and you can tinker with your team and have a look. But Martin Odegaard looks like he's joining the side on loan. And this is really big because he gives the team the chance-making ability that be lacking, but also he might work as a backup or play in tandem or give just a little bit of relief to Emil Smith-Rowe. It's fantastic. And what I think is a big thing there is we often talk about the new manager bounce, and this is something that I will be talking about in regards to Chelsea assets. Very soon we will be having London is Blue podcast to talk about what on earth is happening with Chelsea there. But I think that there's a new player bounce as well. You see sometimes, we saw it with Manchester United, with Fernandes, if a player can join and hit the ground running, which is rare, don't get me wrong, it is very rare that that kind of ridiculousness happens. But even just the signing can sometimes psychologically boost a side, and Arsenal will see that. And I've looked at his underlying data, and his chance creation in La Liga last season, I think he was next to Messi in terms of chances created and progressive passes. But also looking at somebody who is a really creative player this season, Grealish, his data is very similar to that, passes into the box and all sorts of things. So realistically, Lacazette might be an alright own if Arsenal can kind of come through this difficult run of fixtures unscathed. That's more of if that transfer comes about, but I think there's a real possibility there. I'm going to move it quickly on to, though, one that I think is a dead cert, and Antonio. Antonio has to be in people's thinking. He's just been looking so good with those back-to-back 90 minutes. The side of West Ham, they haven't put up crazy good attacking numbers. I think that's part of the fact that Antonio's not in the side. But what I will say as well is they've quite underperformed their XG over the last 6 game weeks. So they had about 8 XG. They've only scored 6 goals. And I think this underperformance will be rectified with Antonio back in the side. The Athletic had a really good thing about Mikel Antonio having the best XG per 90 in 2020 of 0.68, whereas Harry Kane was on 0.48, Vardy 0.47 and Mane 0.46. That's really exciting stuff. And in game week 19, sensational in that double game week. 2 goals, second best XGI of all players over that double game week. He's fastly becoming almost the template player there, Ben. Does that put you off him, that he's so template?
His injury history and his problematic hamstrings are more of a put off. The concern for me is that, and by his own admission, David Moyes has already come out and said, I've probably played Mikel Antonio you know, a little bit too much considering where he's coming from. They've got rid of Sebastian Haller. They don't really have anybody of experience within that West Ham squad who can come in and ease the burden. You can maybe have players in as a stopgap who can deputise potentially in there in that striker's role, but nobody, comes close to doing what Mikel Antonio can do. So it's always a worry. For me, injuries never seem to be too far away from him. He's a big, powerful unit, very explosive. And that's you've got the sheer volume of force that are going through those hamstrings and their quads. That's what's causing the problems. And we know that fatigue is a major contributing factor to soft tissue and muscular tears. So that would be my only worry. And again, we're coming up to 4 matches here that Mikel potentially will start in the space of, maybe a 14-day period. So that would be a slight worry. But, taking that away, I can see the appeal, and he would definitely be one player that would be, on my radar as well. You follow the form, West Ham have got that. Mikel Antonio, like I say, he's come back in, and those 2 goals that he got in game week 19, so he's looking sharp. There's still more to come from him. That he will only get better the more minutes that he does play. So, there's good omens there, and he's a good one.
So maybe we should turn our attention to somebody else who plays in Claret, and I waxed lyrical about him earlier in the season, and I think it might be time to consider him, but there is that post-COVID worry in the Aston Villa squad. I'm talking about Ollie Watkins. He had the 3rd best XGI of any player over the last 6 game weeks. And the team had great data before the outbreak, also 5th best fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. Villa seemed to be ticking along all right before this COVID hit. I think their defence is a little bit of a worry in terms of conceding. Their underlying data was getting a little bit worse before the outbreak. But attacking wise, they were amongst the best attacks in the league. 3rd, 2nd, 1st in some data. Shots inside the box are plenty. Watkins has underperformed all season though, coupled with that post-COVID struggle. What is your thoughts and feelings on maybe that Aston Villa as a target there?
I had concerns about Villa coming into double game week 19 on the back of that COVID outbreak, and a few reasons for that. The main one being we know that players were self-isolating. We just didn't know the reason why, whether it was through close contact, whether players had tested positive. And there's 2 outcomes there. You have those players who are asymptomatic, and likelihood is they've done a little bit of training away from the club. I think Jack Grealish was fairly vocal and forthcoming with Instagram updates on his work. And then you've also got the ones that are displaying symptoms who would have done little or nothing. And that would have been Trezeguet, I think, is one player that springs to mind. Fortunately, it looks like the majority of the squad or the bulk of that first team seem to have come through pretty well. But my concerns are, again, you're talking about players who have, you can almost, if they were symptom-free, asymptomatic, you can use that little break as almost like that winter time just to recharge your batteries and come back in. If it isn't, what we might see is, you get through the first game, you get through the second game, it's almost that you'll get through on adrenaline, that level of enthusiasm because you're back into football, you're back at doing what you're going to do. But now you're coming into your 3rd game and your 4th game in quick succession, and that level of fatigue may become a slight concern. We touched this on the midfielding podcast, which got lost. And we talked about, have we looked at my list, and we don't discuss who we're going to bring up prior to the podcast. But I actually have Antonio and Watkins listed on the sheet in front of me as well. So we are definitely along the same headlines. With regards to that, I think the problem is for me, coupled with that, I'm just not a big fan of Aston Villa. I have put Newcastle down to the Championship twice. I think, in recent times. So, that doesn't sit very well. And I mean, he's far too template for me anyway, Ollie Watkins.
I like that. I like that the template is the thing that worries you there. Just I was just going to say as well, we had this in this fabled lost mystery podcast that we did do together, where we're not making this up. But yeah, there's I suppose that is why we are the on-screen couple, because we've got this good link together. Now, I'm going to end with just a couple of points here, and you may agree or disagree here, but these are both avoids, big X's, something like that. I just wanted to ask you, Ben, quickly, if you have... We know you're famous for your dance interpretation, sometimes towards the end of shows, sometimes in the middle with the 3-2-1s. What would be your dance interpretation of avoiding certain teams? Would you come in with like a big X, or what are you feeling on that one?
I mean, X has already been done, hasn't it? I mean, I've got to go. I've got to go all Undertaker, and it's just a.
I love that. That is incredible. That's almost as good as my Hon Stones joke. That was so dad joke. It was unreal. But yeah, I like that. So we're gonna have the people to avoid, like the Undertaker. Maybe one day we should incorporate like a body slam through a table when COVID allows that sort of thing. But for the moment, I'm gonna say two people that a lot of people are actually talking about in the community, but I have concerns over. Now, the first one sounds a bit sacrilegious because we've been so hot on him throughout the season, and I do love him individually, but Southampton are looking goal shy, and this makes me worried about Danny Ings. Now, previously, Southampton were doing quite well with chances created, but over the course of the season, now the team have only created 25 big chances. That puts them well down. And with their recent games as well, they've really tailed off in terms of attacking numbers. They've been mixing it with teams like Crystal Palace, Newcastle. They're even worse than Sheffield United, 4 XG over the last 6. In terms of shots inside the box, they're second from bottom. In terms of chances created, third from bottom. This is actually worrying stuff for me if you're going to get in a striker who is, I wouldn't say premium, but he's fairly expensive at his price point. I know that Ings is so good at kind of creating chances for himself, and he's such a high quality shooter that even a half chance for him will be going in. But with that terrible underlying data, we can't even gloss over it. Second from bottom or bottom in some of that key attacking data. Does that put you off owning him?
Yeah, and I think it's almost, the number of injuries that Southampton are carrying at the moment. It's all coming, home to roost. Heading into game week 20, we see Ryan Bertrand out, suspended. Kyle Walker-Peters has picked up an injury. We have Romeo out. In the past, you can maybe look to the likes of the bench to bring a little bit of spark. Nathan Redmond should be back soon, but of course won't be ready. Musa Gijanetto, he's currently sidelined. Danny Ings is just coming back as well from testing positive for COVID. So that would have had a big impact on that team. Even Vestergaard, arguably one of the Saints' best central defenders this season. He's currently out. So it's difficult for Hasenhüttl, and they don't, the problems aren't going to be easing overnight. I think it's still going to be another game or two, or possibly even 3, before they start getting some of those numbers back. So it's going to be difficult, especially when you're carrying a relatively small squad, and there are a lot of key players missing out of that side. You're expecting some young players to be coming in. It could be 20. You could be looking at Valerie and I think it's Watkins at fullback. You've already got Diallo in there. So it's going to be difficult. And I am cooling me. I'm cooling me passion on the Saints at this moment in time, just because of that extensive injury list.
Goodness me, it seems weird. Again, we're in agreement here. It just is heartbreaking for me because I do love a bit of Danny Ings. I think, he's always served me well in terms of FPL. The final point that I wanted to bring it on was Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Everton. He's returning to fitness. It looks like he'll be starting again this week. This midweek fixtures. But Everton's attack, I mean, we talk about the Saints there, but actually the only team worse than them have been Everton over the last 6 game weeks for attacking data. Just 2.3 XG over the last 6 matches. Chances created, bottom. Shots inside the box, bottom. This team are devoid of ideas at the moment. It's truly, truly worrying stuff going forward. Obviously, Calvert-Lewin coming back into the side might add a little bit more, but they seem to have hit a stumbling block, a hurdle. They did all right in the FA Cup, but who was the opposition that they were playing against? People were kind of going in and saying, "Oh, look at how good James Rodriguez is," but who was he playing against? So it makes you wonder. So I'd give a big avoid there, a big Undertaker, slitting the throat action there, because they've been so bad. I would not touch them with a barge pole at the moment. Would you agree on that one, Ben, before we wrap up the show?
This was one DCL he's on my list. Since Ancelotti arrived at Goodison Park, only Harry Kane has scored more goals in all competitions during that period, so since December 19. And what I would say about this last 6 game week period, we've had James Rodriguez, who's been carrying niggles and knocks and hasn't been involved. We've had Richarlison, who's also been carrying a couple of knocks and niggles. We've had Calvert-Lewin, who himself is returning from a hamstring problem. So we've also had Digne out. He's in terms of a supply line. We've got him coming back in as well. So for me, it's not all doom and gloom for Everton. And yes, you're right not to read too much into that FA Cup victory, although you still have to go out there and do a job, which they did. But I can definitely see things on the up for Everton there. A few wins puts them right back into the mix. They're still more than capable of taking, points off some decent teams. And depending on ownership, I mean, even DCL might be, he could wing his way into dinner squad. Who knows?
Ooh, that is a big shout there. That he'd make it even into the elusive, exclusive Ben Dinnery team. I mean, that is a huge kind of compliment to him if he were to get that honour. I think that may propel him into stratospheric. Who cares about the England call-up? Euro 2021, that's nothing. If you make it into the Ben Dinnery squad, that is where it is at. But also, this is where it is at for your premium Premier injuries content, although we are the Premier Pundits because we're talking about the football, but of course Ben is involved, so there will be great injury insights as well. But make sure to keep subscribed, like and share this content because we're coming out daily at the moment. We are being pretty consistent, I feel, almost as consistent as maybe Liverpool were last season. But for now, as always, we wish you luck. Maybe not as much as luck as we need at the moment. I think I want to take a little bit of that luck for myself, give you a little bit, but not too much because I definitely need a few green arrows. And I'll spread that over to you as well, Ben. I'm just passing it through the screen towards you. But for now, thank you for tuning in as always. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm going to say goodbye from me.
And most definitely, it is a goodbye from me until the next time.